And even though funding to Ukraine has taken a hit in the U.S., President Joe Biden has urged world leaders not to abandon Ukraine in its grinding war with Russia, warning that Russia is pinning its hopes on other nations growing weary of the fight. His remarks come at a time when polls show that U.S. support for Ukraine's defense is beginning to wane. Having pledged to support Ukraine for as long as it takes, Biden needs to stiffen Americans' resolve in the face of economic pressures they are currently facing. European Union foreign ministers meeting in Kyiv are also warning Russia not to count on weariness in Europe over support for Ukraine. This is the first time the assembly has been held outside the bloc. Ukraine is not an EU member but wants to join. The meeting comes a day after further military funding for Ukraine was left out of a last-minute U.S. budget deal. The EU has already announced more than 60 billion euros of military and civilian assistance for Ukraine, which is set to arrive over the next few years.
Whether what happened in the U.S. Congress last weekend is an incident or a system. I think it was an incident. We have a very in-depth discussion with both parts of the Congress, Republicans and Democrats, and against the background of a potential shutdown in the United States, the decision was taken as it was. But we are now working with both sides of the Congress to make sure that it does not repeat again under any circumstances.
Because this war is having deep consequences for the whole world, but for us Europeans, it's an existential threat. Maybe it's not being seen like this for everybody around the world, but for us Europeans, allow me to repeat it, it's an existential threat. And that's why we have to continue supporting them and discussing with our American allies and friends for them to continue supporting it.
Joining me now for an analysis of current developments around the world is a journalist, Francis Hughes. Good to have you join us.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
I was talking to our last guest on this particular issue, and I want to start there with you as well. The very fact that this meeting is coming at a time where further military funding for Ukraine was left out of the last-minute U.S. deal. What does that mean for Ukraine?
I think hopefully what we are witnessing is the end days of the war in Ukraine. Hopefully we are heading towards a sustainable peace. I think that Donald Trump is running on a platform of ending all financial assistance to Ukraine and military assistance. In fact, I think if he is elected in November 24, he will bring the conflict to an end. That will just leave Europe. They can promise 60 billion over as many years as they want going forward. But Europe does not have the finances and it does not have the military capabilities to continue the war alone, because what we are witnessing is a proxy war by Europe, by Britain and by America against Russia. Russia is not the aggressor in this scenario. The fact that the Ukraine and the EU are coming closer together was actually the basis of the coup in 2014 in Kyiv. So I'm not surprised that the American people and the European people are very much against this war, and I hope that we are witnessing the end of America's continued destabilization of the region.
And Russia is hoping for this waning support from both from the West. Do you think that that's going to happen? That citizens of these countries who are paying taxes and in which those taxes are used to fund this war would at some point say, look, we do not want our monies being spent on weapons for Ukraine?
See, it's not a matter of taxes being spent for weapons in Ukraine. The people are not, I think, necessarily concerned about the finance, although it is has a huge impact on Europe and the North American economy. I think people in Europe, people, not politicians, and people in America, not politicians, want to see this war end. not because of the financial cost that's involved to the individual, but the individual lives and the slaughter that's occurring every day in the Donbass in eastern Ukraine. I think the people of the world want peace. The people of the world want to see an end to this slaughter, this type of like First World War figures. I mean, so many, I think 800,000, 700,000, 800,000 people dead in 2 years. I mean, it's unconscionable. We must have peace, and America and Europe, the politicians, must stop promoting this war and killing Russians and Ukrainians in huge numbers.
Mm. And it isn't clear how long more this war will go for. But this meeting of European Union foreign ministers in Kyiv, how symbolic is that?
Well, it's symbolic, and that's all it is. Zelensky has been promised that at one stage that Ukraine would join both the EU and NATO. And Ukraine, I don't think, will ever be allowed to join NATO because Russia has said consistently that that is a red line. So I think Ukraine will join the EU. I think it will be a rump state that will have no access to the sea if the Russians liberate Odessa and the ports along the Baltic Sea. So I think then, you know, we will witness Ukraine join the EU, and we will witness some form of a de facto ceasefire. The war will continue so long as Biden is in power. Biden brought the coup about in 2014. Biden started the war in 2020 when he financed and armed the fascists in Ukraine. So I think then when he leaves, and if Donald Trump is elected, then literally the war will be over.
All right. Thank you so much for your thoughts on this. Journalist Francis Hughes.
Thank you very much.